What is up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to FudgeMuppet. My name is Scott, and today we have another great Cyberpunk 2077 build for you guys, changing it up completely from the stealthy hacker playstyle of the previous build. This is the ultimate slice and dice experience. You ever wanted to be a cyber samurai or just a badass with a hidden mantis blade in your arm? Well, then ladies and gents, this is the build for you. This is all about surging through waves of enemies, killing each in a single deadly strike. With a focus on very high crit chance and crit damage, as well as some crazy powerful perks from the Cold Blood tree, you will become an unstoppable force of nature as quick as the wind and as destructive as a hurricane. This, folks, is your ultimate weeaboo anime playstyle, so strap in and get ready to do some Naruto runs, because this, ladies and gentlemen, is the samurai build. So let's get started with character creation. The two main stats for this character are reflex and cool. So we're going to put 3 points into each, bringing them to 6, and then the spare single point can just go into body, but that's not important, really. Yes, I know body increases your melee damage and health, and you may think this is necessary for a melee build, but as you can see, the insanely high crit chance and crit damage, as well as movement speed, just makes it so you won't even get hit, and even when you do, the Cold Blood skills and perks just buff the hell out of your defenses, plus the benefits of Cold Blood work hand in hand with this hyper-aggressive playstyle, racking up stacks of it with each kill. Reflexes is going to increase our movement speed, evasion, crit chance, and mantis blade damage, and cool is going to increase our crit damage, our resistances, stealth damage, mono-wire damage, and it reduces enemy detection speed. The latter 3 parts of that attribute don't really factor in much for this build, but the crit damage, the resistance, and the Cold Blood perks at a high cool attribute level are just irreplaceable. So like I mentioned in the previous video, the gear system in this game is kinda counterintuitive to role-playing, unless you want to invest super high in the tech tree, but then that also limits your build options. You're going to be constantly finding new weapons and armor to swap in and out for better stats. Obviously, the basic recommendation is going to be use the best available katana at your disposal. Here I'm using a legendary rating katana that I just found on a mission somewhere. Ultimately, it's your attributes, perks, and skills that determine the effectiveness of your character in Cyberpunk, but also your cyberware, which we'll get into in a moment. A last recommendation, just for fun, would to be wear the kabuki style face masks and even the samurai looking helmet, just for fun. But yeah, moving on to the cyberware where stuff is a little more important. The limbic system enhancement and the visual cortex cyberware are fantastic for this build, as they further increase your crit chance and crit damage respectively. Straightforward there. The Kata resist is also a very wise choice, as it boosts your resistances through the roof, which will stack with some of the Cold Blood effects we have. But quite importantly, though not entirely necessary, is the synaptic accelerator. This little piece of tech I have equipped slows time for 30% for 3 seconds when you're detected by enemies. The purpose of this is so that when we enter combat, we get this slow time effect where we can quickly get a look at the situation and get a head start on the carnage before enemies have a chance to mobilize properly. I would also make sure that you get the best subdermal armor you can, like I have here. The legendary version offers a 200 boost to your armor rating, and with this in conjunction with your clothing and some of the crazy percentage-based buffs this character has, it does make you quite the formidable force. The micro rotors are also recommended because they will buff your attack speed. More attack speed equals more DPS, so very wise choice. Now you can also use the mantis blades for this build. Both the katana and the mantis blades take advantage of the exact same perks and skills, so you can use either, but obviously for the ultimate weeb experience, you're gonna want to use a katana. The final recommendation, which I use occasionally, is the Sandevistan device, which replaces your hacking cyber deck with a device that slows time and offers various buffs like crit chance and damage. You can use it, after all we won't be using hacking, but then again I would prioritize all other cyberware first. Perhaps though the Sandevistan may be more helpful in the early game. Okay, so now we have all the cyberware sorted, let's get into conversation about perks. Now, the perks you have available are determined by your attribute score that it is governed by. You also get perks for certain skill level ups or even other rewards, in addition to 1 perk per level, so it's kinda hard to say exactly which perk to get at exactly when, because you may have 9 perks by level 5, if you see what I mean. So ultimately, you want want to get the perks as soon as they are available to you, but what will limit that is the attribute score. Now, unlike the previous build, I would recommend a slightly more balanced approach rather than dumping into one single stat. You're going to start with 6 reflex and 6 cool, so you'll probably want to go 1 for 1, cycling the stat each level until you hit around 12 in each. But then, personally, I would recommend going all in on reflex at that point until it's 20, and then bring up cool to 20 from 12 afterwards. Reason being is that once you have cool at about 12, you got the gist of the perk benefits you really need ASAP, so then you can focus on reflex, getting that crit damage, movement speed, and also unlocking some of the top tier perks which make a big difference for blades. But bear in mind, if you really do want to, you can continue going 1 for 1, and I don't think that's a bad idea either. I just have a preference to go for reflexes first. Anyways, speaking of all the perks, let's get into them. We'll start with the blade skill tree. Now, you may notice that I actually only have a handful of the perks here, and that's because a lot of the perks in blades actually have to do with bleeding damage and duration, as well as dodging, counter-attacking, or defensive attacks. Now, as you could tell from the gameplay, this character simply sprints and slashes. We don't want prolonged fights of counters and residual damage. We want the enemies down and down quick. So one of the very first perks I would recommend, aside from getting Cold Blood, is Sting Like a Bee, which has 3 ranks, and ultimately it gives you 30% more attack speed with blades. More attack speed means more DPS, so a good choice. Flight of the Sparrow also has 2 ranks, and it is an earlier perk which reduces the stamina cost of attacks with blades by 50%. Now, Slow and Steady is a fantastic perk which, at 2 ranks, simply just increases your armor rating by 30% as long as you're moving, which is the crux of this build's playstyle. Roaring Waters is also a great choice, which at 3 ranks increases strong attack damage with blades by 50%. These are the earlier perks you can get, and outside of these, you will want to work on Cold Blood in the early game. But later on, as your reflexes attribute gets higher, we have some great options. Judge, Jury, and Executioner at 3 ranks increases damage done against enemies with max health, and combined with the aforementioned Roaring Waters perk, your initial powerful swift strike will unleash massive initial damage, and after either dying or taking massive damage from the first opening power attack, the 3 ranks of the Fiery Blast perk will take effect. This causes an increase in damage with blades by 3% for every 1% of health the enemy is missing. So you come in and say there's a tough enemy who manages to tank your first heavy strike, and he has 60% health remaining. Well, that 40% health he is missing will convert to a 120% boost to your blade's damage against him, and the further his health goes down, the more damage you will be doing, guaranteed to get the job done. Blessed Blade is a simple perk that increases crit chance by 20% with blades, a must-have, and the final and super powerful perk for the blade skill is Death Bolt, which makes it so that when you defeat an enemy with your blade, you will restore 20% of your health and get an increase of 30% to your movement speed for 5 seconds. And let me tell you, 5 seconds is more than enough to close the gap and kill your next enemy with all that movement speed, so you can get recovery, and it helps you chain more Death Bolt triggers. It's a crazy good perk, though you can't get it until you have reflexes at 18. Now, I mentioned Cold Blood, but interestingly, along with the high cool stat, we get access to a lot of stealth perks, which we can creatively take advantage of. At 2 ranks, From the Shadows increases your crit chance by 50% for 7 seconds when you're first detected in combat, which is very valuable for those first moments in surprising your enemies like a sudden storm of blades. Now, we also get Hasty Retreat, which increases movement speed by 50% for 5 seconds when enemies first detect you, but we aren't using this to run away. We are using this to charge head on and close the gap at the start of combat and deliver some crazy crits immediately. So those 2 perks are quite helpful for this playstyle. But now let's get into Cold Blood. With all 3 ranks of the Cold Blood perk, it will make it so you gain a stack of Cold Blood, which increases movement speed per stack by 2% for 10 seconds, and this can stack up to 3 times, giving you a 6% boost. Now, with Coldest Blood and Unbreakable, we will also get 2 extra stacks, which would give us 10% extra movement with max stacks of Cold Blood. Doesn't sound that great, does it? But wait, the movement speed isn't the real benefit here. We're going to be getting the perk Predator, which at 2 ranks increases your attack speed by 30% per stack of cold blood. So if you kill an enemy, you get a 30% boost to attack speed. Get another kill, get 60%, so forth and so on until 5 stacks when you have a 150% boost to attack speed. Crazy good, and cold blood only gets better. Defensive clodding is going to increase your armor by 20% per stack of cold blood, so ultimately at 5 stacks, this gives you a 100% boost to armor rating. Then will to survive is going to give you 5% resistances per stack, giving you a 25% boost to resistances. But you may be thinking, well, you still gotta kill 5 people. Well, there are 2 other perks that are going to give us cold blood stacks without having to rack up 5 kills. Cold and calculating now gives us a 25% chance of getting a stack of cold blood after landing a critical hit. And since this build has such a high cool attribute and perks like Blessed Blade, we're going to land a lot of critical hits, therefore it's pretty easy to stack up cold blood to max on 1 to 3 enemies. Also, we get the perk Blood Swell, which means if for some reason we get compromised and our health falls below 45%, we instantly get a max stack of cold blood, which gives us all the maximum aforementioned effects. The final perk I'd recommend here is the perk Coagulant, which makes it so that instead of 10 seconds finishing and then losing all stacks of cold blood, you instead losing 1 at a time. So you may have 5, 10 seconds pass, then you have 4, then another 10 seconds pass, and you get 3, and so on. But now you know all about the cyberware, the attributes, the skills, the perks. It's time to get into the playstyle. Simply enter the enemy area, you'll be detected. The Synaptic Accelerator procs, and you get a short period of slow time, which is also combined with boosted movement speed and crit chance from those stealth perks that we got. You close the gap in no time, get a kill, and now you start chaining cold blood, only getting tougher as you kill more. Remember to use the power attack as your opening strike, because you will be getting a damage boost from Roaring Waters to your strong attack damage, which combined with the Judge, Jury, and Executioner perk leads to devastating opening strikes, usually resulting in a kill. Outside of those tips, it's as simple as get good and rush your enemies. This is a high octane, high speed playstyle. You want to keep the cold blood chain going. The more you kill, the harder you become to kill. But there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks so much for watching. I really hope you're enjoying yourself playing this samurai build. My name is Scott from FudgeMuppet. Like the video and subscribe for more Cyberpunk content. Thanks again, and I'll be back to nerd out with you again next time.